Journalists all over the world face constant threats in the practice of their profession. Such threats often include spying, digital attacks, censorship, social media blackout, assault, arbitrary arrest, legal detention, kidnappings, and in extreme cases, murder. In spite of the existence of the Freedom of Information Act, journalists are more often than not denied access to information and sometimes face trial under the Cybercrime and Anti-Terrorism Act. As a response to this and more, stakeholders of the International Press Center gathered in Abuja on Wednesday to identify appropriate mechanisms suitable for the safety of journalists.
Where we examined the findings of the Afro Media Barometer and the various challenges that they pose. At that meeting, we came up with a number of committees to look at the different aspects of our work as relates to the broad issue of media independence, press freedom, and the safety of journalists. One of the issues that came up at that meeting was also the whole question of what do we do over issues of attacks on journalists. Many of us regularly take individual actions. We issue press statements. Sometimes some of us go to court, but these attacks still continue. And so in that regard, there was also the question of what is the way forward.
The Executive Director, Media Rights Agenda, Editan Ojo, while highlighting issues concerning the safety of journalists in a democratic society, suggested the adoption of the African Union Resolution on the Safety of Journalists as a national response mechanism.
Now, for the benefit of those who may not be familiar with the UN Human Rights Committee, is the treaty body that is established by the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights to oversee the implementation of the right, to monitor implementation, and it also serves as the adjudicatory body under the treaty. Part of what it does is also to interpret provisions of the ICCPR, and it does that interpretation in what it calls general comment. So if we accept these two statements, I think we'll come to the inevitable conclusion that when there is attack on journalists and other media workers who are essential to journalism and the existence of a free, uncensored, and unhindered media, the ability of citizens to make the best possible decisions about their lives, about their livelihoods, about their society and their government will be at risk. And at the same time, the democratic underpinning of the society would also be undermined. I'm not aware of any awareness raising in the judiciary, among law enforcement officials, military personnel, among journalists and in civil society about the international human rights and humanitarian law obligations related to the safety of journalists. I'm not aware of government monitoring and reporting of attacks against journalists. And I have tried over the last few years to find out and obtain Nigerian government's report to the General Assembly or to the UN Secretary General, as it is required to do under this resolution. And I don't see government condemning attacks against journalists. In fact, most times government is the perpetrator of the attacks. Yep. And then I don't see that government is dedicating resources to investigate and prosecute attacks against journalists. I would in fact say that I'm not aware of any case of attacks against journalists where the perpetrators have been prosecuted.
The President, Nigerian chapter of International Press Institute, IPI, Mojid Musikilu, sheds more light on his experiences with security agencies and other top government officials in the quest to ensuring the safety of journalists.
When we were elected in December, we tried to map out a series of high-level engagements. And some of them, on March 31st, we met with the Inspector General of Police. On April 12th, we met with the Minister of Information and Culture. On May 11th, we were at the office of the Director General of the SSS. So there are a number of pending high-level engagement that we've penciled down. Some we've written to them, and we are expecting feedback from them. We've written to the President because we believe that maybe he does not quite understand the role of the media and what his guys are doing down the line. We wrote to the Attorney General. In fact, we wrote to him long before some of the guys we have met. He hasn't responded. So we're just trying to see whether we can send him a reminder. We wrote to the US Embassy. We haven't heard from them. We wrote to the European Union and the French Embassy.
The International Press Center, IPC, is an independent, non-profit and non-governmental media resource center established to facilitate the active role of the media in the development of Africa and particularly Nigeria. Mercy Eke, DCTV News.